at the new numbers that have just come in. PPP polling, public policy polling, and Ron Paul. Ron Paul at 20%, Mitt Romney at 19%, and Rick Santorum at 18%. Basically a three-way tie because they are all within the margin of error. Here comes Rick Santorum charging from behind, hitting his opponents from behind.
Again, and again, and again,
and again. Don't do it! Doctor, watch out! He's coming from behind. And he really is. Rick Santorum on a massive charge. In the last week alone, he is up 8 points. You got to remember, this guy was sitting at like 2 points forever, okay? He gained 8 points in the last week alone. He's in great shape. He's speaking in exactly the right time. And here's another fact that's very relevant, which is that he is the candidate with the most amount of second place votes. Now, they haven't voted yet. I want to explain what that means. When they ask people in polling, all right, well, if you didn't get your top candidate, who would you vote for? And they say Rick Santorum is the leading candidate in that field. Now, that's very relevant because in this primary, nobody knows who they're voting for, so they keep changing their minds. If the electorate was set, then it wouldn't matter much. For example, if you go to Ron Paul supporters and they have Rick Santorum at number 2, it's irrelevant because they're voting for Ron Paul, right? But for people like Mitt Romney, Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann, the fact that Rick Santorum is their second choice is very relevant. And historically, a conservative candidate usually does a charge from behind in Iowa almost every year and usually makes a bigger impact than the polls showed. So the fact that Santorum's almost at a tie for first, and he's got that historical backing, and he's got the second choice backing is very important. And how about voters deciding within the last 7 days? Most relevant here again in a primary where they're not sure who they're going to vote for. Look at these numbers. Santorum leads that category at 29% going to Santorum in the last 7 days. Romney's at 17%, and Paul and Gingrich are at 13%. And then finally, one of the big reasons that Rick Santorum is surging right at the right time is that he has very little negatives. If you look at the positives versus the negatives on favorability, it's 60-30. Now, why is it 60-30 in favor of Rick Santorum? Because no one believed earlier that Rick Santorum was relevant, so that they never bothered to drive up his negatives by doing attack ads. So he's gotten a free ride, and since he has a free ride, he's sitting at a point where the voters have tried to sample all the others, Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann, Newt Gingrich. They didn't like any of that. A lot of them don't want to vote for Mitt Romney, and obviously some of them don't want to vote for Ron Paul because they have their own niches. And then they go, all right, who am I going to vote for? Well, the evangelicals are going to go to Rick Santorum at this point, it looks like, because time is running out. If we had more time, they'd hit Santorum harder. The other guys would. They talk about his downsides, which there are plenty of. He got clobbered in his own state. He was involved in the Ensign affair, which we will talk about later in the program. He has some crazy comments about homosexuality, which, again, might not hurt him in an Iowa GOP field, but it brings up his downsides for a general election. He's less likely to win in 18 different ways against Barack Obama. But the Iowa voters, it appears, will not know any of that going into the election. He's got the huge problem with earmark. He loved pork barrel spending. But largely, the Iowa voters will not hear that. He peaked at just the right time. So the way I have it right now, I've got Santorum and Paul in a dead heat, and I think Romney's going to come in third. But a lot of polls still have Romney at number 1. They poll every single day, right? And I'll tell you, even if Romney comes in third, it's still great for him. If he's close. Now, he might not be close because, like I said, conservatives really surge at the end in the Iowa caucuses. But if he's close, he's thinking, oh, my God, these guys beat each other to a pulp. I hardly needed to lay a glove on them, and I came out pretty close to the top anyway. It's his basically dream come true in Iowa. But on the other hand, you never know until they vote.